One of the biggest issues in my creative life is that I've just realized I'm exhausted. I decided I wanted to go to this weekend with Michael Cusick and just find out what this Restoring the Soul weekend intensive was all about. And I'm not going to get into too much of that here, but I just want to clarify a few things that I have shared here that I've gotten a lot of questions about. Hey friend. So, I've been away from this for a little bit. I took some time off, got a lot of work done before Thanksgiving, and then traveled to the Pacific Northwest with my family to spend Thanksgiving with my wife's great aunt and her family. That was absolutely phenomenal. The woman is 99 years old and still sharp as a tack. It's just pure grace and goodness to be around her. But it's beautiful up there, and it was very, truly refreshing. So I'm back, and before I jump back into the video that I filmed a few weeks ago, I just wanted to share where I'm at on this whole process. And the track is basically first draft style done. Like, I've got everything laid down, it's written, it's produced, and it just needs to be mixed and mastered and you know, layers added in, that kind of thing. And I'm gonna show it to you as we continue going. But all in all, this process of creating a video series around creating a track has been challenging and enlightening and very stretching. And this is gonna go a little longer than I had originally planned. I think I said I was gonna be done by Thanksgiving. And obviously Thanksgiving has come and gone, and we're in the week after, and it's, you know, it's just taking longer, and I'm so okay with that. I'm so down to let the process happen. I've had multiple people ask me, like, what does it mean to be addicted to God? Because that's what I said in the intro to this whole thing. And my answer to that is I wish I would have had better language in the moment when I recorded that first video. What I wish I could have said was I was addicted to performing for God. I was addicted to gaining God's approval through my behavior. In other words, I was addicted to religion. And I was addicted to a toxic form of religion that leads to death. Yeah, I'm just gonna stop that guy right there, because that was at 3 in the morning a couple weeks ago, and I had had a few beers and it was semi-coherent. So if I could just pick it up now and kind of fill you in on that. So the gist of that is, yes, I had an addiction to religion. And for me, that meant like it was an addiction to performance. I would, you know, have to read my Bible a certain amount or pray a certain amount to get favor from God. And I didn't even know who God was, had no experience with him or encounters with him. And surely there was no love actually in my life. And I knew those things in my head. I grew up in Sunday school and all of that, but none of it went from my head down into my body and into my heart. And so that aided in the addictive lifestyle that I lived, where I have this just deep shame all the way down at my core that I am a bad and disgusting person. And again, it's like all the truths of grace were in my head, but they just never made it through to the core, because shame is like a raincoat to the soul, repelling the living water. And it's like, I've heard that statement before, but that reality was present in my life for basically 30 years. And even though a couple years ago when my marriage fell apart, I decided to jump into a recovery group, specifically for recovery from porn addiction. And that was, you know, the #1 chief addiction in my life. But I had, you know, like I've said in the first video, I've had plenty. I have a vacuum cleaner inside me, it feels like sometimes, that just is gonna suck whatever's in front of me into myself to try and fill the empty. And it gets sucked into that void, and it never fills the empty, and in fact the empty grows. And yeah, I've learned a lot about emotions, and you know, the Enneagram has been incredibly helpful in my life, and I've done a lot of therapy. I had this vision one time in therapy that I was inside my heart, and it was very fleshy and very red, and you know, it was very clear that it was like tissues inside one of my atriums. And I was behind this pane of glass, and on the other side there was this black, kind of like a squid looking thing that was just holding this opening shut, like clamping it shut. And I walked up to the glass, and the glass just opened for me. And I walked into that room and encountered this black, you know, octopus looking thing. And it didn't look like it was trying to harm me or do anything. It just kind of released the valve and stepped away. And in that moment, I knew that was fear, that it was, this fear and anxiety I've had my whole life, especially as an adult, trying to keep the shame at bay and trying to force myself into goodness and trying to perform religiously and just be somebody that I'm not. It was the impetus to wear masks, and it was the impetus to hide from everyone in my life. So in the vision, I slip down into this opening, this tunnel, and I fall into a room that's the same kind of fleshy material, like I'm still in my heart, but it's black. The walls are black, and there's a naked boy in the corner curled up on the floor, and he's just pathetic looking, and I instantly know that it's me. It's my childhood self, and I'm naked, and I'm scared, and I'm sad, and most of all, I'm ashamed. And in this room, I felt tremendous anxiety and tremendous fear. The type of fear I felt after some really bad decisions I've made in my life, that kind of I am bad, shit is wrong. And there's so much of my sexuality was in that room because it's all been clouded with shame. Most of all from the church with really, really bad teaching, in purity culture and all that shit that just makes all of us hide and fake our real sexualities, and ultimately sends many of us, 90% of us statistically, into pornography. But then that boy got up off the ground and he motioned towards another tunnel, and I stepped towards it, and again, anxiety just took over. And so I'm in session with my therapist, and we're doing EMDR. That's what kind of triggered this, and if you don't know what that is, you can go Google it. But I was like, man, I gotta stop this. I feel like I'm making this up. And the therapist was like, no, just keep going, let it happen. So I walk down this hallway, this fleshy hallway, and I look outside and I can see, I guess, into the rest of my body. And I could see what looked like Jesus. And he was walking, kind of pulling his way through my vascular system and making his way down next to me as I'm in this tunnel and he's on the outside. And he's got this look on his face of absolute expectation. The way I remember it, his face is oh my gosh, I've been waiting for this to happen. Here you come. Keep going. And so I continue going down, and I get to the bottom of this tunnel, and it's black still, and there's a vault at the very bottom, like a big submarine door. And I decide to open it, and as I open it, I'm flooded with light. And as my eyes adjust, there's a huge, massive, sprawling room full of treasure. And Jesus is sitting right there in the middle of it with a smile on his face. And when I had that vision, I left very somber. I left feeling oh God, I wish that was true. I wish that was true, but I know that I'm shit, so that can't be true. And then I go on this weekend with Michael John Cusick in Restoring the Soul, and what I encountered on this weekend was a validation that vision was true. And I received just really beautiful forgiveness towards the church and all the hurts that I've received from the church, all the pain that the church has given me, and men in power and authority over me giving me lies about what's real. I've held bitterness towards that my whole life, which also fueled the addictive process. Because at the end of the day, because of some of the abuses I've encountered, both sexual and spiritual abuses, I internalized it like it was my own fault as a kid. And as I grew on up, that turns into shame. So I received just forgiveness from that. And I left the weekend, just renewed and excited to be following Jesus again in a real way. And I knew that my next step was music, because music was hidden under that shame blanket as well as my identity. And as I'm uncovering my identity as a loved and good man, made in the image of a good, loving Father, God, I know that music is down there too. And this is my declaration that I am a musician and I'm a composer. So that hopefully clears up a little of that. And I just want to disclaimer, I am not proselytizing in any way, shape, or form. I absolutely hate that. I could give a shit if you're a Christian or not. I hate the label Christian because of what it represents in our culture so often. And there's no fear with any of that. So this is not a proselytization, if that's a word. This is just a sharing a little bit more about my heart and why I'm trying to bring you into this journey of healing and of growth towards music. Okay. I think that's it. I think that this track is ready. I'm going to hit play. Without further ado, here's my first attempt at my journey back to music.